I never thought much about the podcast at first. It was just something I listened to on the commute, a true crime deep dive into cold cases from a half-dozen states over. The host, a woman named Cora Vance, had a voice like crushed velvet, warm and patient, the kind of voice that could make an inventory of shoelaces sound sinister. She'd walk you through the evidence, the timelines, the grainy photos, and she'd always end with the same question. If you know something, say something. I never had anything to say. Then she did a 3-part series on a case from 20 years ago. A missing woman named Elise Marchetti from a little town called Sparrow's Rest, about 40 miles north of where I grew up. I'd never heard of the place. But on episode 2, Cora described the last place Elise was seen, a gas station on the edge of town at a crossroads where a dead oak tree stood like a crooked finger pointing at the sky. And something in my chest went cold. I'd seen that tree. I knew that tree. When I was 11, my dad took me fishing on a back road that cut through a stretch of woods I never learned the name of. We had a flat tire around dusk, and while he changed it, I wandered into the brush. I found a clearing with an old oak split by lightning, its bark scarred and white. There was a fence behind it, half collapsed, and beyond that, the silty bank of a creek that ran black in the twilight. I remember thinking the whole place felt like a held breath. I didn't stay long. I told myself it was coincidence. Oaks like that are everywhere in the Midwest. But the next morning, I found myself looking up Sparrow's Rest on Google Maps. It wasn't on any major route. The gas station was gone, replaced by a self-storage lot, and the crossroads, the one with the dead oak, was in a place called Crane County. I zoomed in on satellite view. The tree was still there, so was the clearing, and so was the fence. I don't know why I called the tip line. I think I wanted to feel helpful, to prove to myself that my memory was just a ghost of a normal childhood day. I left a voicemail. Just a few details, the oak, the fence, a vague timeline. I didn't expect to hear back. Cora called me 2 days later. Her voice was even warmer on the phone, almost intimate. She thanked me profusely, asked a few gentle questions. I told her the whole story about the fishing trip, the flat tire, the strange quiet of that place. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a pause long enough that I checked to see if the call had dropped. Then she said, very softly, "You didn't see anything else, did you? Anything under the fence?" I said no. I told her I didn't even remember what was under it, just the rusty wire and the leaves piled high against the posts. She thanked me again and said she'd look into it. I hung up feeling foolish, but also a little proud. I'd helped. Maybe. A week later, the podcast didn't drop its usual Thursday episode. Friday came, then Saturday. No update, no post. I checked Cora's social media, nothing new in over a week. Her last post was a photograph of a handwritten note on yellow legal paper, the words blurred beyond reading. The caption read, "Getting closer." That's when I started looking into Cora Vance. She was a former crime reporter for a regional paper in Ohio, left the business after what her bio called a personal tragedy. No details. She started the podcast on a shoestring budget, no advertisers, no sponsors. She did it all herself, research, recording, editing. Her voice was the only constant, and she had a strange habit: she never posted her own face. No headshots, no video clips, not even a profile picture on the show's website. Just a logo of a cassette tape wrapped in twine. The Marchetti case was her most recent deep dive. Elise Marchetti vanished from Sparrow's Rest on a Tuesday night in late October. She was 24, a veterinary assistant, described by everyone as shy but sweet. She had no enemies, no debts, no secret life. She just walked out of the gas station, got into her car, and never arrived home. Her car was found 3 days later in a ditch 2 miles from the crossroads with the dead oak. The doors were unlocked, the keys in the ignition. Her purse was on the passenger seat. There was no blood, no sign of struggle, just a half-empty coffee cup in the cup holder, still smelling of nutmeg. The case went cold in 6 months. I read every old article I could find. The local paper's archives were sparse, just a handful of wire stories and one long feature with a photo of Elise's mother holding a laminated flyer. The mother had died 3 years ago. No siblings, no father in the picture. It was like Elise had been scraped out of the world without leaving a dent. But the satellite image stayed with me. I zoomed in further, past the oak, past the fence, into the tree line. The resolution was too low to see anything clear, just a mottled carpet of grays and greens. But there was one patch where the color changed. A darker, more uniform gray, like a rectangle someone had painted over. I told myself it was a shadow, a rock, A fallen log. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I drove to Sparrow's Rest. I told myself it was research, closure for a stranger I'd never met, but my hands were shaking on the wheel. The road was exactly as I remembered, narrow, unlined, the asphalt patched in places with tar that had turned to gum in the heat. The woods pressed in close on both sides, their branches laced overhead like the ribs of an old ship. The light turned green and dappled, then thin, then gone. I found the dead oak. It was bigger than I remembered, its bark the color of old bone, split down the center like a wound that never healed. The fence was still there, more collapsed now, the wire sagging into the weeds. I parked on the shoulder and got out. The air was still and warm, thick with the smell of dust and wild onion. No birds, no cars. No wind. I walked to the fence and looked under it. The leaves were piled high, the way they had been when I was 11. But now I knew they hadn't been there 20 years. They'd been there longer. Years of them, layers of decay, dark and damp, like the earth was swallowing something slowly. I crouched down and pushed the leaves aside with a stick. I saw fabric. Blue, faded but unmistakable denim. The leg of a pair of jeans, stiff with dirt, emerging from the soil as if the ground had given up trying to keep it. I jumped back, my heart hammering so hard I could taste copper. I stumbled to the car, got inside, locked the doors. I sat there for 10 minutes, staring at the fence, waiting for something to move. Nothing did. The woods were silent. The sun had slid behind the tree line and the light was turning the color of rust. I drove home without stopping. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. That night I tried to call Cora. The phone rang twice, then went to voicemail, a generic recording, not her voice. I left a message. I found something under the fence, please call me. She didn't call back, but the next morning an email arrived in my inbox. No subject line, no signature, just a single attached file, an audio recording. I hesitated before clicking it. The file was labeled Elise Final. WAV. I listened in my kitchen, the morning light slanting through the window, the coffee going cold in my hand. The recording was 47 minutes long. It began with the sound of footsteps on gravel, then a door opening, a heavy door, metal, maybe a vehicle, then scraping. And then a voice, Cora's voice, but different, tired, raw. She was talking to someone, but I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation. She said, I know what you did, I know where you put her, and I know you didn't act alone. A long pause, then a man's voice, muffled, almost inaudible. He said something I couldn't make out. Then Cora said, show me. There was a sound like fabric shifting, a zipper. Then footsteps on concrete descending, a door opening. And then silence, pure absolute silence, so complete I checked my speakers. It lasted for nearly 30 seconds. I was about to skip ahead when I heard it, a whisper, not Cora's voice, a different one, female, very faint, as if coming from a great distance or from inside something sealed. The words were indistinct, but the tone was unmistakable. It was pleading. Then the recording ended. I sat there for a long time. The coffee was stone cold. The sun had moved across the floor. I played the recording again and again. I isolated the whisper, boosted the gain, ran it through a filter. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the shape of them. 3 syllables, a name, Elise. I started searching for Cora Vance in earnest. I found her old articles, a few archived bylines. I traced her to a town in central Ohio called Kilgore, population 3,000. I called the public library there. A woman named Gertrude answered. I asked if she remembered a journalist named Cora Vance. There was a pause. Then Gertrude said, you mean the one who dug up her own backyard? I asked what she meant. The shed, Gertrude said. About 8 years ago, she bought an old farmhouse on the edge of town, had a little tool shed out back. She was cleaning it out, getting ready to renovate, and she found something in the floor, a trapdoor. There was a room underneath, concrete walls, drain in the floor, and a mattress. I didn't say anything. The police said it was just an old root cellar, but she never believed that. She started looking into the people who lived there before her. A family named Marchetti. There was a daughter, died young, I think, or disappeared. I don't remember the details. It was all very sad. I thanked Gertrude and hung up. I spent the rest of the afternoon cross-referencing the names. Sparrow's Rest, Kilgore, Marchetti, Cora Vance, Elise Marchetti. The house Cora bought in Kilgore 8 years ago had once belonged to a man named Albert Marchetti, Elise's uncle. He died in 2013. The house had sat empty for 2 years before Cora purchased it at auction. She had been living in Elise's uncle's house for 8 years before she started the podcast. She had found a hidden room in the shed. And she had spent the last 3 years making episodes about Elise's disappearance, never once mentioning her own address. I checked the podcast's website again. This time, I looked at the About page, which I'd only skimmed before. At the very bottom, in tiny print, was a line I'd missed. All episodes produced and recorded at the Kilgrove House, Kilgore, Ohio. I felt the floor tilt under me. I pulled up the satellite image of Cora's address. The farmhouse was small, neat, with a gravel drive and a white fence. Behind it, next to a bare patch of dirt, was a shed. I zoomed in. The roof of the shed was corrugated metal, rusted in streaks. But there was something else. A shadow on the ground, long and narrow, like a door lying flat. And then I noticed the detail that broke something open in my mind. The shed was positioned at the edge of the property where the yard met a tree line. And beyond that tree line, the land sloped down toward a creek I recognized. The same creek that ran behind the dead oak in Sparrow's Rest. The same watershed, the same dark water. I sat back in my chair. The room was growing dark. I hadn't turned on a lamp. I had called Cora Vance with a tip about a cold case. She had thanked me warmly, asked gentle questions, and then vanished. And now I was looking at a satellite image of her property, and I couldn't stop thinking about the trapdoor in the shed, and the concrete room beneath it, and the whisper at the end of an audio file that was never meant to be heard. I tried to call her again. The number was disconnected. I checked her social media. The account had been deleted. The podcast was gone too. The website returned a 404. Every link, every episode, every archive, wiped clean as if she had never existed. But I still had the audio file. I have it now on my phone in a folder I don't open anymore. It's the only proof I have that Cora Vance was real and that she knew something about a woman named Elise and that she went looking for the truth somewhere she shouldn't have gone. I don't think she found it. I think something found her. And I think it knows I have the file. Because last night I got an email. No subject line, no text, just an attached audio file labeled Listener Final, WAV. I haven't opened it, but I can see the file size. It's 47 minutes long, exactly. And I'm sitting here in the dark, the phone in my hand, the screen glowing, and I can hear something coming from the speaker, even though I haven't pressed play. A whisper, very faint, pleading, and it's using my name.